on that front.
We're good to go.
Awesome. So we'll structure this with some sort of prepared questions that I'll start with and kind of bounce to the panel. And then we'll have some time at the end for questions from students. So feel free to write them down, jot them down. You could even send them in the chat and we can kind of go through them at the end. But I'd like to start with introductions. So I'm going to toss it over to the panelists to introduce themselves. Why don't we start with Kiara and you can pass it on to the next person.
Hello, everybody. Kiara Coons, maiden name Kiara Merlini, class of 94, from Holy Cross, and did a bunch of school later, and now I am a paintings conservator. I am the senior conservator, head of the paintings lab at Westlake Art Conservation Center. We were formerly the Westlake Conservators private practice, and 2 years ago it was sold to a not-for-profit. So we are currently the only and largest regional center in New York State, up in the Finger Lakes. So we have a whole team of people. We have paintings and paper frames and murals, and we are growing into objects and textiles. And that's it. How about Daniela?
Hi everyone, my name is Daniela Santamarina. I graduated actually quite recently in December of 2024, and I studied visual art history and psychology. I currently am about to start a new role in development at it's called Community Access to the Arts, and I'll be working on donor relations, event planning, and fundraising. And it's an organization, a nonprofit that supports art programming for people with disabilities. And I also have a lot of experience since I've graduated and in my last semester of Holy Cross working in museum collections management and archival management as well. So looking forward to discussing that a bit further. I also had some time studying abroad at Temple University Rome as well for a whole year, which I really loved. It was a very formative experience for me. And I was also very involved on campus in the library book club, figure skating club, and a lot of time with the study abroad ambassador program. And I'll pass it on to Aldona.
Hi, my name's Aldona Casey. I also graduated in 2024, but in the spring of 2024. And I currently work at the Springfield Museums as a exhibition technician assistant, or just a tech. And the Springfield Museums are 5 museums, 2 art collections, science, history, and Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss is from Springfield, so we have the Dr. Seuss Museum. It's our most popular one, kind of Springfield's claim to fame. So I've gotten to say I've worked with Dr. Seuss's baby book. Um, and I primarily work in the art collections. I want to be work in conservation and perhaps collections maybe one day. So the museum's been really great about pairing me with our objects conservator and with our registrar and doing work with them. And I'm essentially a custodian for the art there. And then I think the final one is Brooke.
Yeah, hi, I'm Brooke Hendershot. I graduated spring of 2023. And I was actually a chemistry major at Holy Cross with a studio art and museum studies double minor, so like a slightly different background than a lot of people that end up on these panels. And I work as an art conservation technician, or also colloquially just a tech, at Fine Art Conservation Labs, which is a private paintings conservation lab in Santa Barbara, California. So I generally describe myself and the other tech as the conservator's second and third set of hands. We only have one full-time conservator, and we often have upwards of 60 or 100 paintings in the lab at once. So there's just a lot going on always. And so I just get to handle art between pickups and deliveries, photography, some analytical work, cleaning, structural improvement, varnishing, all that kind of stuff. I have a hand in all of it and have been learning a ton since I started working summer of 2023, and it's great. I'll shoot it back to Lauren for questions.
Great. Thank you all for those introductions. You gave us a brief overview of your job currently, but I'd like to dig into a little bit more of the background. So if you could describe a little bit more about your career trajectory since graduating. Let's start with Daniela on this one, since I know there's been a lot in that short period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, I have only been out of Holy Cross for a couple of months now, and I've been trying to really figure out, what I want to do with my career. And I think my journey has been really driven by a long-standing interest in the arts and cultural preservation. Of course, studying both art history and psychology allowed me to, explore a lot of different fields. And my internships have given me a lot of hands-on experience. I was able to assist with textile research at the Cantor Art Gallery, and I've also been conducting archival research at the Berkshire County Historical Society. And I currently also am doing collections care management at the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. Collections care management and that field in itself, I think, is such an underrated career path, but it's so essential. And I've had such a wonderful time getting to know, all about storage management and database research and learning how to take care of objects. And I've got to go on so many different site visits. And I really valued and the detailed work that's involved in collections management. And so these experiences have really steered me towards, you know, figuring out what I want to do with my career. But something for me is that I really am looking for something where I can really leverage my passion for storytelling and my commitment to creating accessible art opportunities. So that's what's kind of led me to the field of development, where you can kind of have more of that public facing opportunity and kind of get to have a bit more of a tangible effect, if that makes sense. So that's something that I've been really passionate. I've been a bit more mission oriented with what I want to do with my career. So I'm transitioning a bit into that development side of things, and I'll be soonly starting that role in April. So I am looking forward to that. And I've also learned that people really do value transferable skills. So even though my experience is in collections management, that does bring so many valuable experiences that in this interview process that I've just recently had brought up so many different stories and skills that are going to be really valuable, especially with database management in development. So that's kind of where I'm at now and what my trajectory has been the last couple of months.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Else want to weigh in and talk about career trajectory?
I mean, I can say, as someone who's always has been interested in pursuing conservation since I was 16 years old, and really just gone for it the entire time at Holy Cross. I didn't think I was gonna end up in just some private lab all the way on the West Coast, but you can either from talking to my superiors at work, you can either go an institutional kind of route by getting a master's degree, which I applied and didn't get in this year. We'll try again next year. Or you can, apprentice under lots of different conservators, learning lots of different techniques and figuring out what best specialization would be for you, which is what my mentor and boss at my lab did. She didn't get a master's or anything, and both are perfectly valid ways to advance in the field right now. So there's that kind of split trajectory is what I'm looking at right now.
I've had a really, really short trajectory. I didn't know museum work was what I was going to be passionate about. I was a studio art major, and that was the only career I could think of. I was like, okay, I'm getting an art degree, and everybody told me I'd never be able to get a job with it. And museum work was the first thing I thought of and something I pursued. But it turned out to be way more intricate than I ever thought, and something that I love way more than I ever thought. And the position I currently hold was the first job I applied for right outside of Holy Cross. I applied in the summer, so I graduated in May, applied in the summer and started working in the summer. So I've been there for about 6 months. So pretty short trajectory, I guess.
And I've been in this field. I've been a conservator. I graduated in 96. So after I graduated from Holy Cross in 1994, I actually went to the European route. I'm originally from Italy, and I decided that I wanted to go back, excuse me, to the Mecca of the arts and go back and get my master's in Florence, Italy, which I did. I really wanted to do something, pursue something that was going to be um, a means to give back, um, especially when thinking about art history, which I majored in at Holy Cross, and being an artist myself. I really wanted to complete the triangle and give back to the community with the skills of chemistry, as Brooke, as you did, and history, and all the different ways. So I went directly to Florence and got my master's in 2 years there, and then worked with along the way, and then afterwards worked with different private practices there and in different churches, doing some frescoes there, and then made my way back to the United States. And then life happened, got married, and but I kept working along the way, and then made my way up to the Finger Lakes after working in New York City for a while. So it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful industry to be in. There's so many avenues, whether it's advancement, development, historic preservation, you name it, collection management, etc. And we all intertwine and we all work together, and that's the interdisciplinary means of it is just so crucial. Um, and I really am here to help, the next generation, to help whoever is willing and curious about this field, which is in the United States, it really is a fairly new field, but it's so important. And I'm talking a lot, so I'll hand over to somebody else.
Maybe I'll transition and ask, kind of from the zoomed out to the zoomed in perspective. Can you tell us a little bit about your day to day? And I'll open this up to anybody that wants to start. And if you don't have a day to day yet, maybe talk about maybe Daniela specifically for development, like what you anticipate some of your duties to be. So anybody that wants to start with this one can.
I'll jump in to start. Being on a team of 5 people, there's a lot going on in the lab that I work for, and my day-to-day kind of changes a bit. It's like a bunch of building blocks that get put together in a different order every day. Um, because some days we'll be sent on a big pack out and delivery, such as recently, a family in Montecito donated like 7 large paintings to UC Santa Barbara's library. So we, pack up all of our materials, go to Montecito, take everything off the walls, get it to UC Santa Barbara, help them get it up on the walls, tell them any of the concerns that are up with the art. And other days it'll be an entire 6 hours of, hey, we have 25 new intakes that just got in from Los Angeles. We need to get them all ready for evaluation and treatment. Some days we're researching artists for specific clients. Other days it's being hunched over a mural, scraping plaster off of the back of it with scalpels for hours and hours on end. Specifically, in my position, you just kind of got to be ready for whatever the higher ups need of you that day. But it does keep things interesting.
I can add to that, that every day is completely different than another day, depending on what you're working on. We are a not-for-profit, but we are still, we're fairly small. There's 8 of us, and between the conservators and the technician and the administration. So sometimes we are dealing with private clients, sometimes we're dealing with universities or museums or historical societies, and mostly they come to us. Sometimes, just as Brooke said, we are packing up all of our supplies and driving over to someplace else. We are analyzing, photographing, sometimes doing cleaning tests on site, sometimes installing art, sometimes taking art down, sometimes taking murals off of a wall um, with plaster and all. And so sometimes they're very exciting with things like that. Other days we are sitting in front of a computer writing examinations, looking under UV light, looking under infrared light, looking to see if a signature looks the way that it is. And um, it is very different from day to day. But that's what makes it so lovely because otherwise we're sitting there with a scalpel or with a Q-tip all day long. Daniela?
Yeah, I can absolutely talk about both what I'm doing now in collections management, which honestly does play a lot into what you've both been discussing with conservation. So a lot of what I do does change on the day to day, which I love having a different thing, whether sometimes I'm doing database work a lot, so it's a bit more on the computer and a bit more, a bit more relaxed. And then sometimes, we'll be driving to one of the historic sites in New York, and we'll be assisting, picking up a desk and bringing it back to the headquarters. So that's something I really appreciate. But more in the day to day, it's assisting with inventory and storage maintenance and rehousing of collections objects and updating records, as well as creating and filing and renaming digital assets. So it's one of those things where it's a lot of collaboration and doing different projects. So it always keeps things different. And in terms of development, so, of course, haven't started it yet, but I am anticipating doing a lot of donor relations work. So, building and maintaining relationships with donors, drafting communications, event planning as well, so assisting with coordinating their fundraising events, which I'm really looking forward to doing. So, a lot of logistical planning and engagement strategies, fundraising supports, like grant opportunities, maintaining their donor database, and then other general administrative and collaborative work from what I've gathered as well with any nonprofit and any role in the arts field, it's you wear all the hats. So whenever you're needed somewhere else, you're there. And I think that's the joy of it all too. So that's kind of what the day to day is like.
I think I have a little bit more structure in my job than what I've been hearing just because it is a museum environment. I split it 20%, 80. 20% of my day is spent doing rounds. So I open up the museums, turn on the lights, clean, make sure nothing was stolen or vandalized, making sure labels look okay, making sure the objects are okay. Just making sure we call it making sure nothing went bump in the night, and checking on everything. And then 80% of my day is filled with whatever project we're working on. So if we're installing a show or deinstalling a show, it's kind of all hands on deck with cleaning, hanging art, making signs, laying vinyl. And when we're deinstalling, it's the same thing, just all in reverse. And when we're not working on a project like that, we are maintaining the objects that we have on display.
That's great. Thank you all. And so, with all of that, how would you say that you leverage your liberal arts background in the work that you do?
It's so important. I don't know how I would have done this or gotten to this point otherwise. It's so important in what we do, to have math, to have science, chemistry background, to have history background, not only art history, which I majored in, but just history in general, philosophy. Um, you're not only sitting there talking to a painting all day, you're dealing with clients and you're dealing with private clients, you're dealing with museum clients, historic, um, you know, all different areas. Sorry if I'm spilling my words all over. But it is so important to listen. And that is one thing that I learned a lot at Holy Cross. And to be open to all different avenues because they do merge. All of the different avenues that you have. And if I had just gone to art school and just done that, I don't know. I mean, hindsight is 2020, but I really honestly think that I would have missed a lot. Um, I would have missed a lot with the friends that I had at Holy Cross and really understand what they do and what they study. Um, and I think it was crucial for me. When I was at Holy Cross, really opened my heart and opened my mouth as well because I was a wallflower before that. So it really gave me, and I'm speaking at Holy Cross as a liberal arts, but it could be any liberal arts in general. But it was just such a wonderful experience that allowed for me to go into this very specialized field.
Yeah, I
Um,
can. Sorry. No, Brooke, you go
sorry.
ahead. You go
Sorry.
first.
Yeah, just like building off of the idea of liberal arts in conservation from like my specific experience, Holy Cross made me a master of what I affectionately call academic whiplash, which was the experience of going from a 2-hour drawing class covered in charcoal, being in Millard, and having to sprint over to the science complex to take my uh, upper level materials chemistry seminar for the next 2.5 hours, and having to like completely change mindsets. And just because there's so much encouragement from admins, from professors, from advisors, from everybody to be multidisciplinary and to really dig into all these different fields, which a lot of my friends who went to state schools simply like couldn't. They were not allowed to do these things. And I think it just gave me a unique kind of ability to change gears super fast. And something that the conservators I work with often say is that they're surprised that I have so much chemistry knowledge coming out of a liberal arts school, and that I have like this specific but also very broad set of skills as well as like a level of professionalism. And I feel like Holy Cross's take on the liberal arts and really like encouraging you to have breadth as well as depth in your understanding and passion for learning has helped me a lot so far, and hopefully will keep on doing so.
Yeah, just to build on that a little bit more, for me, it's really like it's already been said, but for me, it's also been the ability to connect insights from so many diverse disciplines, which I think has both enriched my professional background, but also my personal growth. And having the well-rounded education has taught me, analyzing complex ideas, but also appreciating multiple perspectives, which are skills that I think are going to be so ideal for my new role, especially with storytelling and donor communications. But I mean, even more importantly, the broader educational experience is going to help me, and it has helped me become a more empathetic and receptive individual, which are qualities that are so essential for thriving in a DEAI workplace, which I'll be going into, and just for existing in the world anyways. But it's really enabled me to, emphasize the need for a more inclusive work environment where every voice is valued. And it's made me not just a better professional, but a better human, which I think in any career is something that should be valued.
I think that's terrific. I'm wondering if there are one or two skills that you developed specifically while you were at Holy Cross that you use today in your work.
Mine are like pretty specific to what I studied, but being able to be a precise chemist, which I got from being able to actually do lab work at Holy Cross, has turned me into the quote resident chemist in my lab because I actually have the most chemistry education out of anybody who's in house most of the time. Um, and just like having an ingrained procedure of like how to run these reactions, you know, how to take care of all your reagents and your equipment has been super nice. Um, and I'd say the other is just being able to do quick research, being able to go through databases and through any like available online archives, anything, journals from like the Journal of the American Institute of Conservation we're looking for optimizing some of our procedures in the lab. And I just worked with these things so much throughout many different classes at Holy Cross. And at the moment, honestly, I did think, when am I ever going to use this? And then suddenly used it a lot immediately after graduating. So don't discount those things that might seem niche. They're probably not as niche as you think.
I would say problem solving and critical thinking. Two ends of the spectrum, but used daily. Where I'm helping my team out, with a problem, if and then critical thinking about chemistry, about how to solve um, whether we're cleaning something or researching something or reframing or rehousing or doing a collection survey. They're all two things that I use on a daily basis. And yeah, that's what I would say.
I would also say leadership skills and being a part of like an organization and having a leadership role. And that doesn't necessarily need to be like an executive role, for example, but any role where you get to voice your opinion and have input at Holy Cross, like if it's in a club, for example, it really allowed me to sharpen, my interpersonal skills and my relationship building skills, which are so essential in the field of development and even in collections care where you're really working together to problem solve, whether it's like a storage issue or a collections object that you're working on, or in development where you're trying to strategize for a fundraiser. And it's all about, growing these long-term relationships. So I think for me, I was always a very shy person and not really into public speaking. So growing into these leadership roles in different organizations have really helped me grow and like being able to speak more freely and also voice my opinions and collaborate with others.
Awesome. Okay. I would love to ask a question about networking. I'm sure everybody here has heard about how important that is. And I feel like for people that are just starting out, that can feel really abstract. So, can any of you talk a little bit about building a network or maintaining a network and what that means to you?
I have the networking story. The man who interviewed me, he went to college with Professor Scomp. Professor Scomp, she was my I, mentor. I'm obsessed with her. I took so many classes with her. She knows me the best. She was my reference. And so we're chatting, we're talking, and I bring up the name Leslie Scomp. And then we keep talking and end up, they went to college together. They're friends. They keep up with each other. I'm pretty sure the reason I got the job I did was because the guy interviewing me was friends with Professor Scomp. So the word networking got thrown around so much when I was at college, probably by Ben here. And I had no idea what that meant. I was like, I don't have a network. I don't know what a network is. I don't know how is this going to help me? And it happens. So just be nice to people, talk to people. It's like I feel like especially for my generation, it's so hard for people to talk to people. Talk to people, be nice to people because you don't know how it could help you and it's just a good thing to do anyways, but it could help you. So It was awesome. And like after that interview, I felt so good. I was like, I know I just landed that job because it was so fantastic. We got to talk about her. She referenced me. So it was, I feel like that's a really good networking story.
Um, for me, it was difficult at first because I went straight to get my master's in a different country. So those 2 years I was there, and then coming back, re-entering later um, into the United States, it really it was a little bit difficult to finding, work, um, as it sometimes is back in the United States, with a foreign school. But I went straight back to the resource center at Holy Cross, and there was no real internet yet at that point, or a handshake or anything like that. So it was me, calling them and really, and then I actually went back there to speak to them, and I was able to get um, a job, sort of, not really in conservation, but well, it was at Sotheby's in New York City, and then working with the furniture conservation there. So but it was through an alumni at Holy Cross who helped me get the interview, who was also at Sotheby's then. And from there, I was able to build a network. But that's another reason why I love doing these panels. And I am coming back full force now, is because I want to be, um, I want to help with networking. I want to help anybody that I can to get into this field or any field adjacent to this one. Because I feel so, that it's crucial, and we're a small world, even though we're in this Zoom and there's people all over the place, it still can be quite isolating to find something.
So, Kiara, if somebody wanted to network with you, what should they do?
Yes.
What should they do?
Well, I was looking at the Holy Cross website, and I have to complete my thing, for to get somebody to network with me. Otherwise, send me an email or call the lab and the conservation center, and I'd be happy to speak with you and help guide you any way I can. I've done that with a lot of people already, not through Holy Cross, but other people that I've come across with. And but I'm happy to, I don't know if I can leave it in the chat, or anybody can write it down, but I'm very, very happy to help you in any way that I can. And I know a lot of people throughout all of these years who have gone to conservation schools in the United States and abroad as well, England, Australia, Italy, et cetera, et cetera. So, Lauren, however I can help, please let me know. And Ben too.
I would also say that I feel like I can say that I have been actively pulled into your network as well. We had the Holy Cross connection, but you have reached out to me, and now we have like
Yeah.
an ongoing correspondence. So I think you're a good example of kind of doing that outreach and that maintenance. So Daniela and Brooke, I don't know if you have other input you want to give, but Kiara, I also feel like I feel like I've seen it in action. I've been a result of that. So
Yes, I've been hounding Lauren for a bit. Sorry about that, but
that's not working.
it's on my bucket list to help with conserving artwork at Holy Cross. So I am going to keep actively pursuing that.
Super.
Anybody else?
I think on a related note, mentors. I wonder if anybody feels like they have a mentor that's helped them through your career. How did you kind of work with them, or how did that relationship evolve?
I guess I'd say it's a little on the nose for like a mentor, but having only the one job in conservation, I really just have Virginia, who's the conservator that I work for. She's taught me all of the hands-on skills that I know now with conservation, which is a surprisingly long list for being, a tech up that got hired straight out of college. Um, but I think like the reason I would really consider her a mentor is because she's very invested in teaching me all of these things. And like she's invested in seeing me grow and she's invested in eventually seeing me become a conservator. And she's like, hopefully we'll be able to work again together someday, like once you leave, when you're your own conservator, and doing that. So I would say just look for someone who shows that they care about you and your advancement specifically. And that doesn't have to be your boss or anything, but I think it can be your boss, like it is in my case, which I wouldn't have thought so initially. It's like, oh, I just work for them. Like, I'm not going to have any investment in this, but like, she really cares about seeing me get better, and I really care about doing good work for her. So that's what I've got.
That's great. I think I can ask one or two more questions. So I will encourage the students on this Zoom to start either thinking about them or putting them into the chat or be prepared to unmute. Maybe I'll start with maybe this will be the sort of softball question that opens up the Q&A portion of this, which is to give an opportunity for our panelists here to give advice to the students. So I think anybody that's on a panel like this always has like some burning like takeaway that they want to share. So I'm going to start by giving you the floor and the opportunity to kind of give some good advice that you've generated in your career so far.
Be patient. Be very patient, and not just patience in using a swab or a scalpel and working on a painting, or, obviously you have to have that patience in order to go into this field. But also be patient if you don't get into school right away. Find a tech job, find an internship, find an apprenticeship shop job, and find something that is adjacent that will help you somehow get back into what you're really striving to do and learn. There's always skills. And that's another thing that we've learned being in a liberal arts school is that you're learning all of these disciplines and you're putting them in your pocket because you're going to always need them at some point. And that's the same thing with having patience in finding and becoming what you want to become, whether it's a conservator or in development or a curator or whatever you wish to be. Learn the skills in each of the jobs that you have, in the tech job, in the internship job, and learn those skills and then put them in your pocket, because you all of a sudden one day they're going to all make sense. And you're going to all of a sudden, it took me a good 10 years or so, as a conservator to really feel, maybe even 15, to really feel that, aha, I think I know what I'm doing. you know so have patience, because you will get there.
I think as someone who's, quite early on in their career, I think a piece of advice I have is don't be afraid to pivot. Your interests and your strengths, they might lead you somewhere very unexpected. I was really interested in collections management. Actually, I was really interested in being a nurse for a long time until senior year, and then that wasn't for me. So you never know what's going to come for you. And I'm going to be working in nonprofit development in what's probably my dream organization. Another thing is to advocate for yourself, seek out opportunities, ask questions, and express your goals to your mentors, your supervisors, and anyone who's willing to listen. You never know when that could lead to something else. And also take time to reflect on what excites you about your work. I think finding a career that aligns with your values is the most fulfilling thing that you can do, and something that I've been really trying to prioritize with the career search. And it's not something that's, always the easiest thing to do, but I think it's something really valuable and important to keep in mind as you start looking to your future career.
I think getting an internship is probably the most important thing you can do for your career. I remember over the summer, I was so burnt out from my semesters at Holy Cross. Like, I didn't even want to work a retail job, let alone really think about what I want to have a career in and then try to find something like that. But it's probably the most essential thing you can do if you want to get an art-related job right out of college. They need they want to see experience in anything, and that can be at a gallery or I mean even at a framing at Michael's framing. They're just looking for something. So find it in yourselves to try and get an internship if you can.
And my piece of advice is try not to get tunnel vision immediately. That is what totally screwed me over for a while. I was like, I need to get a conservation thing. I need to get it before graduation, and it needs to be an institution because I just wasn't thinking any broader than that because I didn't know anybody in the field that could like give me that much advice. That's why it's really nice hearing Kara you say, "Hey, just call me up," because some other conservation admins said they were simply too busy to help me out. Um, so like I stressed myself out for months. I'm crying and figgy, like trying, just being like, "Oh, I'm such a failure." And then ended up getting a job the day before graduation, and I realized that none of it was worth any of the trouble I had given myself. And if I had just looked at private practice sooner, not worried about getting a job immediately after graduation, and thought that it's fine to get something in an adjacent field, because you can always work your way through, would have been a lot less stress on myself. Like it ended up working out, but it also probably would have worked out without as much of the heartache.
Oh, super great advice. Um, for our students that are here, if you would like to ask a question, now is a great time for that. Our panelists have a lot to offer here, so I encourage you to take advantage of their time. I can also totally keep going because I'm personally interested in learning more about these jobs. So many of them are adjacent to what I have done and what I do. I think it's such a fascinating field.
Can I jump in with a question, Lauren?
Mhm.
I'd love to ask the panelists in the Career Center. We're always talking about we it's called happenstance learning is a theory that we sort of ground things in. So I'm wondering if each of you could talk a little bit about what are the kind of the planned and unplanned pieces or events of your career that have sort of led you to where you are now, and probably more emphasis on the unplanned, I would say. So would love to hear about that from folks.
I guess I could say, while there hasn't been anything like super large because I've had the one job and still working that one job. Um, that whole like resident chemist thing I said earlier is a lot more official than it should be. Because there kept being these little offhand comments of like, oh no, we're having trouble with our varnish recipe, or specifically one that was, oh no, they had to change the formula of the main glue that we use in everything, and now it's not working properly. And I overheard the owner and the conservator talking, trying to come up with some kind of plan because we kept having to redo some of our treatments and it was costing us a lot of time and money. It was aggravating. It was just bad. And I overheard that through the wall while I was writing an email, and I walked into the room and I was like, okay, this is gonna sound really weird, but can I run an experiment with stuff we have lying around? And I had to convince them. And it was definitely not something they were gonna ask me to help with. But I ended up running like a formal scientific experiment with scraps we had lying around, and figured out a new way for us to run our structural treatments that works like way better than anything we were running before. And me overhearing that conversation ended up leading to me having like a lot of experience working with cleaning solutions and developing new like recipes for some of our techniques and just being the person who is turned to for anything related to like mixing chemicals now in the lab. Yeah.
I developed so many hand skills when I was at Holy Cross, and I wasn't thinking about it as developing my motor skills, but I was. I took a silversmithing class in Siena and bookbinding and 3D sculpture and painting, drawing, mixed media. And all of those things really refined my ability to work with my hands, and that's all I do. I work with power tools, drills, hammers, nails, knives, tape, brushes, paint. And all of that stuff I was doing it, in the name of art to create art, but now I have these really real skills that I get to use to install and hang art. So that was something that kind of just ended up happening.
For me, I have been a figure skating coach for a really long time. And I actually, a few years ago, had the opportunity to work with an autistic student. And that really opened my eyes to the power of a creative outlet and what that can do for people. And it was actually in a conversation with the student's parent that she brought up the organization that I'm going to be working at now, CATA. And that's how I followed them on social media, actually. So I've been following them for a really long time. And that's how I actually saw the job posting. And, development hadn't been something on my radar, but the organization is something that had been on my radar. And so reading the description and kind of seeing how my skills would kind of pair well with what was intended for the role and, my studies with psychology as well as art, I was like, I might as well apply and see where that gets me. And, being able to share the story and going through the whole interview process and now landing this job, it really delves down to this one specific experience that I had that I did not think would lead me to getting a job at this organization. So again, you really never know.
For me, I have this one moment when I was still a senior at Holy Cross, and I knew I had already gotten into school for in Florence, and I knew I was going to go and do, get a master's in conservation. And I was at a lecture where this man was um, talking about how he walked with a donkey across Africa, to sponsor. I forget if it was AIDS or something, and I went back to my dorm and I called my mom bawling, just crying because I said, Mom, I'm not going to help anybody. What am I doing? I'm going to school right now to do things for rich people. Like, what am I doing? I want to help people. And, she calmed me down and whatever, but that stuck with me and it still has, stuck with me through my career. And one of the reasons why I do what I do, these are a set of skills that I've learned, and art is something that I hold extremely dear to my heart. But what I have learned through conservation and is that I am working directly with people. We not only work with museums and universities and the public sector, but we also work with the private sector. And I get the clients that come in on a daily basis and they tell me their stories. This is something that my grandmother painted, or I found this when I was in the attic of so and so. And it's the stories behind these, and to see their faces light up when something is restored and put back together again. And the knowledge that not only they invested, their savings into doing this or just a little bit, but it's something that invokes a memory in them of maybe when they were little, of part of their family. And it's something that is going to help educate the future generations. And that is something that I think about when I go back to that, being in that little lecture room and being all sad that um, that I wasn't helping people, because we are. We really are. And Brooke, I would like to say to you that I think also conservation science is a thing, if you're ever thinking about that.
I know it's a thing. I like working hands-on with the art, doing the
Okay.
treatments. I know I've looked into this, trust me.
Okay. All right. So I don't know if that helps.
That was great. Thank you all. All right, last chance for student questions.
Can I ask how many people here are interested in going into conservation? You can just raise your hand. No, maybe.
Yeah, I can say I don't know all the names on here, but I think I imagine we've got a crop of people coming from different areas. So I wonder if there's any science folks in here, science and art. I know last year we had definitely one double major in chemistry. There's always one or two, I think, that are doing the chemistry thing. But I think what's really interesting to me is all the different ways you can take the arts and art history, all the different fields and all the different pathways that you can kind of go with that. I'm always fascinated by the students and where they come from and where they go. It just is this like perfectly imperfect formula sometimes. Ben, if there's no more questions, maybe Ben, I'll just kind of shoot it back to you.
Yes.
I'd like
So
to just throw something in if I might before you.
yeah.
I was
Go
just going to say thank you all. I think even though we don't have students who are saying that they are interested in conservation right now, as a number of you said, I think introducing students to the paths within our field that are not just being a curator or an artist, and that those are, or a professor, and that those are the kind of three options, that there are all these other development and conservation and exhibition design and installation, that those are careers. So I think having you here introducing these paths and the variety of professions within our career is incredibly important. So my guess is there are students on the call who this is the first introduction of what's involved and what a pathway might be, which is incredibly helpful. So thank you all.
Yes. So thanks to everybody for coming tonight. A big thank you and a big digital round of applause to all of our panelists for sharing their time and their perspective with us. As always, with these panels, I learned something. If anybody here knows folks who weren't able to come tonight, the recorded version of the panel is going to be on CCD On Demand, which is our video content site that you can find in Handshake. So Thanks again to everybody for coming. Thanks to folks who helped plan this. Lauren, Christy, and Rochelle Bodwin as well were really helpful with this stuff. So hope everybody has a wonderful evening and a successful semester, end of the semester. So have a great night, all.
Good luck, everyone.
Thank you. Good
Thank
luck.
you.
Good
Bye.
luck.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks to all of
Thank
you.
you.
Really appreciate y'all. I'm gonna